So today we're going to talk about social media, but specifically trends and how it affects you in your industry. Because here's the thing, a lot of the information that you hear about social media doesn't apply to you. You don't have a taco truck. You're not selling earrings. Are you all familiar with this, where people are trying to give you information that really doesn't apply? So today we're only going to look at practical applications that apply for you as a realtor. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. First thing I want to submit is that social media and technology has shifted human interaction. How many of you have seen children with iPads? How many of you have a baby with an iPad? It makes a great babysitter, right? And so what we're seeing is that people are so intuitively connected to technology in the way that it's built now, is that even children, it seems like they come out of the womb with technology in their hands, right? And so the next step is, we see how it's shifting the way we interact with technology, but additionally, we're seeing how it shifts our interactions with each other. Once upon a time, you went to a restaurant and you saw people doing what at a table? Right. Now what are they doing? Right. They're texting. They're tweeting. They're checking into Facebook and Foursquare. They're taking pictures of their food for Instagram, because don't we all need to know what our friends eat for every meal? That's valuable information, right? And so what's happening is, with social media specifically, we now have a window into the world. You remember 10 years ago, people would talk about 6 degrees of separation, and they make jokes about 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon and everything? Well, social media has shifted it so that now we're more like 2 degrees away from anyone in the world. So I want you to think about what this means for you. Your most valuable asset in business is your network. It is not your degree. It is not your intelligence. It is not your good looks, because let's be honest, you can hire someone else with a degree to work for you. You can hire someone else who's smarter than you, right? And you can also hire someone else who's more attractive to get on the brochures, right? Not that any of us would do this, because we're a pretty good-looking group, right? And so with this in mind, as we go forward and we're talking about social media, yes, we're talking about technology, but I want you to look at it as more than technology. I want you to look at it as people connection engines, because all it is about relationships. And when you take that technology element out of it, it makes you more strategic in how you use it, because you're going to focus on building those relationships, connecting with influencers, and finding meaningful ways to stay connected with those people that are your buyers so that they recommend you to more of their connections. Now, when we talk about our connection to technology, oftentimes we're over-connected. This is an actual picture that a police officer took when he pulled over a distracted driver. True story, okay? I heard someone say, I'm not even going to repeat what I heard from that table over there. But how many of us feel like we're over-connected sometimes? Be honest. Sometimes you feel like you have a hard time connecting. And then there's some of you in this room that are like, no, not me. I have a hard time connecting. I stay away. Who's that? Be honest if you're like, I'm not getting on there. Okay. And so as we talk about how connected people are, the reason we're so connected is because we're actually becoming addicted to technology. I was on Good Day Colorado this morning talking about social media addiction. What do I mean by that? In the past, when we look at oxytocin, that's a brain chemical that's released when someone gives you a hug, okay? They did a study about 2 years ago where they had someone wired up, and they were looking at this person's reaction as they were watching Facebook. Their friends were liking things they posted and commented. Do you know oxytocin was being released? It's like little hugs, okay? So for those of you who can't get off, it's because you're getting tons of little hugs. That's why you like being there, right? And then let's say this. How many of you have ever been on social media before and you saw a post that shocked you? Who's ever been surprised or shocked by something that you've seen? It could be a news story. You might be shocked that maybe someone you thought was intelligent was dumb enough to post something you've seen, right? But that shock produces adrenaline. When you combine those two things, you have addiction. And so on some levels, many of us are starting to become addicted. Now, it's not my job to judge it, but let's look at where this is taking us and think about how we can take advantage of it. Interesting statistic for you. 71% of the world's population owns a mobile phone, while only 62% owns a toothbrush. Sounds crazy, right? But here's the kicker. Here's the thing. For those of us who've traveled internationally, we know, you've seen it before, especially in third world countries, you will see people walking out of shacks with a cell phone. I've seen it, right? And so what does this mean? Here's a question before you judge. How many people in this room sleep with your cell phone? Be honest. Yeah, I see some of you like looking at me like, me too, me too. Now, yes, some of you are saying it's because I have an alarm clock, right? Is that what you're thinking? But here's the thing. It's not just an alarm clock. All your precious pictures are on here now. Many of us do banking from it. Our GPS systems are on our phone. I would have never made it here if I had lost my smartphone. I'd be wandering around in a desert somewhere because I get lost, right? And so we have this connection to this technology, and the question is, understanding that our buyers have these same types of issues, how can we take advantage of this information? Now, one thing that's really interesting is when we talk about connecting people with everyone across the world, I want you to keep in mind with this connection that we really are connected to all parts of the world. Remember Arab Spring? Does anybody remember, a couple years ago, Arab Spring? Now, what was interesting is in the midst of that, we started to see protesters holding signs about supporting Wisconsin workers. That is what social media has done to us. That's how small it's made the world. And so when you have people that you want to become connected with, whether it's your clients that you want to stay connected with, maybe there's a group of influential people who buy a lot of real estate themselves, or maybe you want to get PR for events that you're doing so that you get community recognition. You're very, very close to those key contacts. All you need to do is learn how to leverage that on social media, okay? Now, social media has not only shifted human interaction, but it's shifted the way people buy. And oftentimes we don't think about it. It's made buyers impatient. They want everything now. How many of us know that people want everything now, right? You might get a call at 2. I have a friend that's a realtor. She gets calls at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Because they want immediate answers. And so it's changed that. It's caused immediacy when it comes to that. When you're on Facebook, how many of you use Facebook? Raise your hand. Like you're not ashamed. That was sad. A few of you were like, ah. You'll go and you'll look at another website. You'll be on Google. You'll be on overstock.com. You'll be on websites looking at items you might be interested in purchasing. Then you go to Facebook, and that ad for that item is right there, right? It's shifting the way that people are buying. They actually did a study where it showed over 70% of people, when they're looking at what their friends are purchasing on social media, it can influence their purchases. Everything from travel to neighborhoods they're living in to types of clothing that they're buying. And so you have to understand that now that you have these clients who've already done business with you, they have the ability to produce much, much more business for you if you learn how to connect with them on social media if they're there. Most of your clients are on some level, not all of them, okay? Now, let's look at what's happening with this when it comes to the different generations. Because some of you in this room, you might have the majority of your clients, depending on who it is you're targeting, some of them may not be on social media as much. You might have a lot of clients that are baby boomers. You have some clients that are X's and Y's. And so I want to show you some generational differences because this is affecting the trends going forward, okay? So when we look at generational differences in social media, the first thing I want to demonstrate to you is this chart that actually shows a timeline of technology's commercial adaptation. Now you'll notice on your left-hand side, it has the years as well as the dates that baby boomers, Gen X's, and Gen Y's were born. On the opposite side, you're seeing technologies as they're being released. Are you seeing a trend as the chart goes downward? Are you noticing there's more technology? And so here's the kicker. It is not that younger people are better at using technology because they're inherently smarter in some way. They're used to adapting. Does that make sense? They've had to adapt from day one. And so it's not something where one is more beneficial than the other. And I also want to make sure, as we start talking about the trends, that you don't automatically think, I'm going to give over my social media to Gen Ys. These are people between the ages of 19 and 31 right now, because that's not always the best decision. Let me show you what can happen. So these are our Gen Ys right here, okay? Now, one example of Gen Y mishap would be Red Cross. Last year, Red Cross actually had a 23-year-old intern right out of school managing their Twitter profile. Now, this intern decided she was going to update Twitter, not realizing she was not in her own account. She was still inside of Red Cross. And so what she posted was, actually, I'll get to that in a second. Let's get to her. What she posted was, Ryan found 2 more 4-bottle packs of Dogfish Head's Midas Touch beer. When we drink, we do it right. Getting slizzard. Who thinks it's a problem that Red Cross is getting slizzard? Anybody? And let's see what Gen X's can do. 2 years ago, these two people worked for Domino's. They decided it would be funny if while they were making sandwiches, they created a little video. And they were pretending that they were putting mucus in the sandwiches. Sorry, lunch, you know. And so they uploaded it to YouTube. It took Domino's 2 years of PR makeup to get back on that, okay? So it doesn't necessarily mean different generations will do better. And for the baby boomers in the room, just so that you don't feel left out, we have wonderful Kenneth Cole, who is amazing at putting his foot in his mouth. And he tweeted during the Arab Spring, "Millions are in uproar in Cairo. Rumor is they heard our new spring collection is now available online." Not smart, right? So here's what I want you to understand. As you're moving forward with social media within your organizations, you need a team where you have all the generations involved. And here's the reason why. For my baby boomers in the room, these are people that are 50 through 66 right now, okay? For my baby boomers, you already know business networking, right? Yes? You know business etiquette, right? You may or may not understand how to leverage the technology to make those things happen. I'm going to skip the X's for a minute and go straight to Y's, the younger people. Now, as Y's, and I can speak as a Y because I'm a Y on the cusp of an X, we understand how to use new technology. We can figure out how to make something function in a moment, but we don't necessarily know business etiquette and the art of relationships, which is like giving someone a gun that doesn't know what a gun does. Does that make sense? So what you want to do is you want to work within your team going forward as you're developing strategy with all three generations, because your Gen Ys, they're going to find the new stuff. We like shiny. As soon as something comes out, we're going to tell you about it. The Gen Xs, they're busy. And so they understand how to use technology pretty well, but they're kind of cynical naturally when it comes to this stuff, so they're going to filter out, you know, the overzealous Ys to the things that are really going to be helpful. And then the baby boomers are the ones that say, you know what, this is what works in real life. These tools that have been filtered through by the X's, let's figure out how to use this in our organization to do the things that work in real life. Because the rules of engagement online are exactly the same as in person. I'm going to repeat that one more time. The rules of engagement online are exactly the same as those in person. I need you to do a very quick exercise with me. I need for you to close your eyes. I need everyone to close their eyes. I'm going to demonstrate this fact. Close your eyes. Some of you have trust issues. Okay. Now, I want you to imagine that you're at home right now. You're sitting on your couch and there's a knock at the door. You get up. You look through the peephole. There's a guy with a ski mask on and he says, "Will you be my friend?" Open your eyes. Who just made a new friend? Oh, we have a very brave lady over there that let him in. Oh, we're going to have to send some prayers your way. It's not going to work out too well for you. You know, hopefully that doesn't happen in my home state of Texas, because depending on how close they are to the doorstep, they might get shot, because for whatever reason, that's what we do there, right? But how is that any different than sending a connection request on social media without having a profile image? Oh, stepped on some toes, right? All right. So let's go ahead and get to the actual trends that you should be aware of going forward, okay? We know that we need to work with different generations. We know this is impacting the way that we do business, the way that people buy. So these are trends you need to keep in mind. First thing is that apps and social media sites are going to get simpler and simpler in the way that they look and the way that they actually function. Why is that? How many of you feel overwhelmed by technology at times? Raise your hand. There's always something new. The rules on the networks you're already using are always changing. They're reformatting, right? So there's a lot of information coming at you. And then your connections themselves are inundating you with tons of information. Everyone is feeling this exact same thing. And so if you can utilize these tools to make their lives easier, you will go further. So in other words, while social media is simplifying, while you're using social media yourself, you should make things easier for them. Let me give you an example. So that people are not going to a gazillion different places, you can have a newsletter, right? So instead of simply having a newsletter, which is what a lot of realtors do, that just kind of gives information about an area, a few area events, you can partner with other people. Someone's already bought a house from you or worked with you to buy a house. Now you can actually partner with an interior designer so that they can have some articles on your newsletter. You can actually partner with someone who's a financial guru to talk about how to save money, you know, on your bills in your house. Now, why is this adding value? You're staying connected to these clients who've already connected with you, so that when one of their friends or social media connections mentions needing a realtor, they're going to think of you. Does that make sense? Additionally, the reason you want to do this where you're becoming that expert, where you're making things simpler for people, is that no one wants to buy from salespeople anymore. Everyone wants to connect with experts, and they want to be personally connected with people. I'll give you an example. One of my girlfriends who's a realtor I mentioned earlier, I sent her 3 referrals this year already that have turned into business simply because I saw other social media connections who stated they were looking for a recommendation for a good realtor in Houston. And I just went on there and I said, you know, I know someone. So realize that your clients, your other business connections, they have the ability to refer you at any point in time. Does that make sense? People, when you talk about buying, they're going to social media. They're going on Facebook. They're going on Twitter and saying, hey, I'm looking for this. I'm looking to sell my house. Does someone know someone who can help me? I'm looking to buy a house in this area. Does anyone know someone they can recommend? All you have to do is listen. In my LinkedIn session, as well as the Google and social media session later, I'm going to talk about different ways that you can listen so that when people do post these things, you'll be the first to know and you can very quickly reply and help them. So again, you're coming as an expert. The second thing is over 80% of online searches will be for video over the next 2 years. Currently, it's over 60% right now. So with that in mind, you need to start thinking about how can you produce video. Even if that video is a series of images of your properties rotating. Make them fun, make them engaging, depending on your target market. Obviously, the way that you would create a video for Gen Ys is different than a video that you would distribute for boomers to watch, right? The humor's a little different. But start to think about this, because if you want to be found online, it's actually 50 times easier to get a video on the first page of Google for certain keywords than it is to get a website or text. So it's even easier to get you listed higher up if you start to utilize video. That's another thing we're going to cover in a later session. Mobile phones will completely replace wallets by 2015, so make sure that you're using mobile apps. Make sure that you're available via mobile and that you have options for your clients. And then the last one is customer history and habit data will become more easily accessible. How many of you in here actually use social media to farm information, to get data on people? Okay? Not in an insidious way. Some of you are looking like, oh, that sounds evil, right? But at the end of the day, that information is there. You can see people's buying behaviors. You see who they're connected with. You can get entire member lists of certain organizations. How many of you knew that you could easily pull member lists online? Anybody know that? That's something we're going to go over in the social media and Google session later. And so all this data is here for you so that you can approach people in the way that they prefer to be approached, so that you have that background information so that you know how to better service them, get that sale, and get them to recommend you to additional people. All you have to do is take advantage of the data out there. And here's what's important. Going forward, when we talk about trends and data, don't be the first to think that just because something is new, you have to jump on it. Because no one in here has time to be on everything. That's not practical. And most of you don't need to be on all the social networks, but you do have to have a firm grasp of where your target market is, what social networks they're using, how they prefer to interact, and you have to find ways to stay connected with them so that, again, when it comes time for that referral, they think of you. So keep in mind these trends as you go forward today, and you're going to be much, much more successful with social media.